Hello and welcome to Cox Connections. I'm your host, Gary McCullum, Senior Vice President and General Manager for Cox, Virginia. As part of the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce, Lead Hampton Roads believes that the future of our region depends on well-informed and active leadership. And through its annual State of the Region address, Lead Hampton Roads showcases the area's premier review of the region's economic strengths, challenges, and interrelationships. This year's focus is on defense and the port and tourism, along with an analysis of the housing market, the economic impact of coal, and development strategies. Joining me now to talk about this year's State of the Region address, as well as the impact that Lead Hampton Roads has on the community, are Vice President for the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce and Executive Director of Lead Hampton Roads, Angela Blackwell Carter, and Dr. James Cook, Professor of Economics and President Emeritus of Old Dominion University. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, I'm so excited to have both of you here. Angela, let me start with you. For the past 25 years, Lead Hampton Roads has been bringing together an array of leaders and to strengthen our region's prosperity. Expand on that a little bit. Talk about the last 25 years and what has happened.
The last 25 years have been, I think, exciting years that no one really could anticipate, but we had some very visionary business leaders 25 years ago who realized if our region was going to move forward, we were going to have to build relationships across traditional lines, and those traditional lines could be city boundaries, race, industries we work in, and so they came together and formed Lead Hampton Roads. So for 25 years, we have been bringing each year around 50 leaders together that really reflect the rich diversity of our region.
And so every fall, there is the annual State of the Region address. Talk a little bit about who attends this event and what are the takeaways from the event.
14 years ago, our graduates decided they would like to hear from Dr. Cook and invited him to speak to us. And that went along for a couple years, and then the graduates realized we need to open this up to the community. What Dr. Cook provides with the State of the Region is really important for every business leader to know, every community leader. He sets forward what we can anticipate, what's going to happen, things that we need to know in order to be informed and move the region forward. So we opened that up, and at this point, 14 years later, what we have is really the premier gathering of regional leaders. Each year we have about 900 people.
So Dr. Cook, let me talk a little bit about that. So this is the Regional Studies Institute at Old Dominion University. Give me a general overview of the report. Why is this report so valuable for not just the folks in the LEAD program, but leaders throughout the community?
Well, we think Hampton Roads is a really good place to live, and we'd like to make it even better. And in order to do that, we really have to know where we are and where plausibly we can go. And if you look, for example, at this last year with sequestration, one of the themes of this year's report is it could have been worse, because we didn't quite get hit the way that we thought. Yet, if I gave our economy a grade, it might be like C+ or B-. We're certainly not on the dean's list this last year, but we didn't flunk, and we did better than lots of people think. And parts of our economy, for example, in housing, are really beginning to turn around.
So this year's focus, defense, the port, and tourism. Talk a little bit about those three components. Why the focus in those areas?
Well, the three legs on our economic stool, the three big legs, are defense, the port, and tourism. And defense is roughly 45 or 46% of the regional economy. So when you start talking about defense spending going down, you know that that's a big hunk of what we're doing. But it turns out that it wasn't as bad as we thought it would be. And while the outlook for future defense spending is not particularly favorable, and we have to keep our eyes, for example, on the possibility of losing an aircraft carrier, and that's $1 billion a year in terms of economic impact, it's not all disastrous. The port has had a very good year. It's rebounded significantly from some lows. That's a real strength. Tourism has come back, but it's very mixed in the region. Virginia Beach is doing reasonably well, but Norfolk, Portsmouth, not so well. And if one looks at Williamsburg, the historic triangle, it's really doing miserably. So it depends where you're talking about as to the influence of tourism.
But three key drivers and thus the focus in those three areas. So the report also addresses how our cities and counties are spending their money. What have you found?
Well, no surprise. They spend most of their money on education and on security, police, things like that. The interesting thing we found is that education spending on a per capita basis has been going up in the region. That's contrary to what some people think, but even after accounting for price inflation, it's been going up rather nicely. But a lot of that is due to the fact that school populations are falling. There aren't as many students. And so now one of the critical decisions that school districts face, for example, in Norfolk, Portsmouth, places like that, even Virginia Beach, is are they going to shut schools? And that's highly political, and it's going to be a very tough decision for them to make. But right now, most of our area school districts are supporting some pretty small schools that are very expensive.
You mentioned housing briefly. Any key trends we're seeing in the area of housing?
Well, whether it's prices or inventory, sales, all those kinds of things have improved. We're not back even to where we were in 2008, so one shouldn't sugarcoat this too much, but we've definitely turned around. However, I have to say this, and it is that eventually the demand for houses depends upon jobs. If you don't have a job, you can't buy a house, and so the housing industry will essentially trail the recovery of the economy as a whole.
What is the overall goal of Lead Hampton Roads?
Our goal is to continue to increase the number of leaders who think regionally, who are well informed, and most of all, who are committed and inspired to really take the time and the effort to make a difference here, because we want prosperity that includes all of our citizens
Well,
here.
listen, I want to thank both of you, Angela, for your leadership of LEAD, and
Thank you.
Dr. Cook for all that you do through this report to make sure that we're all educated around these very, very important issues. When we come back, women come to this organization in a time of crisis, and they leave with a renewed spirit, new skills, and stronger lives. Learn more right after the break. Stay tuned for more Cox Connections.